The NBA season is literally right around the corner and we're less than 2 weeks away from preseason basketball, meaning a lot of fans are excited and optimistic about their team this upcoming season. But let's slow your roll. Every team has a few questions that will need to be answered once opening night arrives. So in this video, I'm going to go through all the biggest questions and storylines for all 30 teams in the NBA before we see them on the court. Let's waste no more time. Let's get right into it. Let's start off with the Boston Celtics, the reigning Eastern Conference champions. Even though they did lose in the NBA Finals last year, it's going to be a big thing to see how they respond after losing last year. And I also think that a big question mark is going to be Jaylen Brown. He was rumored to be in a lot of trade talks regarding Kevin Durant heading to Boston, and with him becoming an unrestricted free agent this upcoming offseason, there could be a lot of impact for the Celtics' future if Jaylen Brown was to walk or be traded away for the Celtics to gain something back. Next up, out of the Philadelphia 76ers, and it's going to be on James Harden. James Harden is going to be the catalyst of what happens in Philly this year. If James Harden can revert back to anything similar to how he first looked in Brooklyn back in 2021, I think the Sixers are going to be contenders and big favorites in the Eastern Conference. And if you looked at Harden during the offseason this year, he's put a lot of work into his body, and I think that you can expect a lot of good things from Harden this year if everything holds true. Next, I have the Toronto Raptors, and I think this team is going to be the emergence of Scottie Barnes. I think the biggest thing about Toronto is if Scottie can actually be the franchise-altering player that can change Toronto and the scope of where they're going right now. They have a lot of depth in Siakam, Van Vliet, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., but Scottie Barnes, if he's able to take another leap, this could put Toronto in the driver's seat going forward. For the Brooklyn Nets, it's easy. Ben Simmons, we haven't seen him play in over a year, and with Kyrie and Kevin Durant mending their relationship with front office and the coaching staff, Ben Simmons is going to be a huge part of what they do this upcoming season. If Ben Simmons can actually positively impact the game on offense, especially on offense and on defense, then you could probably see this team reach new heights and possibly be a contender in the Eastern Conference, a high-value contender in the Eastern Conference. But it relies on what we see from Ben Simmons when he comes back onto the court this season. And next up, I have the New York Knicks, and for them, it's going to be if signing Jalen Brunson and extending RJ Barrett was the right move for New York. At the end of the day, it was a lot of money that they put into Brunson and RJ Barrett, so we expect a lot of big things from them. I know Julius Randle's still on the team. They have a lot of young guys on the team that might need minutes, but a lot of weight is going to be put on Brunson and Barrett because these are the max guys that you wanted to pay. Hopefully it works out, but we have to see if this was the right move by New York, and a lot of people don't think so as well, including myself. Let's head over to the West and talk about the Phoenix Suns, and their championship window might be closed. When you look at the Western Conference, there's a lot of teams that have gotten a lot much better and a lot more deeper than the Suns. You talk about their chemistry issues as well with Ayton. I think this team has a lot of talent, but at the end of the day, to win a championship, out of all the teams in the Western Conference, I don't think they're one of the few top 2 teams currently constructed at the moment. They're good, but is their championship window still open? We'll see going forward into this season. Coming up next, the Golden State Warriors. And can their championship window stay open like I just said? I think the Warriors, as you look at them right now, are one of the top teams that can win it all again and repeat. But I think the biggest question mark is if they can cultivate their young core and get them ready to play bigger minutes in this upcoming playoff run that they'll have this year. You have a lot of guys who are going to be free agents next season, and the Warriors have one of the highest payrolls in the league at the moment. So some guys might be gone, but we'll see how they attack that battle in the season. Next up, I have the Clippers, and I think a lot of people may think that the biggest question mark is John Wall in his play, but I think it's PG and Kawhi. PG and Kawhi have been Clippers for around 3-4 years at the moment, and they haven't played over 82 games together as a whole. I think the biggest question mark is if they can stay healthy, and if they stay healthy with their entire depth that they have on this team, they could be a scary team. But at the end of the day, it's being healthy and being on the court. We'll see if they can actually do that this season. Next, I have the Lakers, and I think it's going to be Russell Westbrook. What are the Lakers going to do with Russell Westbrook? There's reports of them having him on the bench, starting him alongside Patrick Beverley. There's even reports of him being traded, and I think that all these reports on Russell Westbrook is not going to help the team going forward. I think it's time for Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss to make a final decision on Russell Westbrook, whether it's to be traded or put him on the bench. I don't know, but the Westbrook decisions, there's a lot of question marks over there in LA. Next up, I have the Sacramento Kings, and I think the Sacramento Kings is clearly will a playoff drought end this year? I think the Kings have a very solid roster that should make the play-in and hopefully make the playoffs. De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis is a duo that both can be all-stars if they play intentionally well. I think they have enough depth on their team that can help them produce in the long 82-game season that they're going to go through. I think they're clearly a play-in team, but making the playoffs is going to be a big question mark if they can do so. I think it's possible, but the Kings are going to have to show us something this year. Let's go look at Utah, the team that just blew up their entire franchise. What's going on? Actually, we know what's going on there. Yeah, shout out Wendy. But no, for real, what's next in their rebuild? I think that now that they've gotten all these assets and draft picks, what's going to happen next with this team? I think right now we're probably going to see maybe another trade with the guys like Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Bogdanovic. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those guys get moved during the trade deadline. But I think the next thing is figuring out what's going to happen in Utah, finding out the new young guys for the future, and figuring out who's going to be the guys that are going to be on the team for the next few years as they go forward in a rebuild. Might have to ask Wendy about that. For Minnesota, we got to talk about that double big lineup. Is it going to be double bigs or is it going to be double trouble? A lot of people are trying to figure out and see if the fit of Rudy Gobert on this team is going to work, especially with two centers, one who isn't a great defensive player and one who isn't also a great offensive player as well. But we got to see how that fit works together. They do have some depth, especially Anthony Edwards should make another leap, but the biggest question mark is going to see if the double big lineup with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, two all-star centers in the league, can work essentially in the league. But we're going to take note of that going forward into the season. Next up, I have Portland. For them, it's if Dame time is enough for this team to make it to the playoffs. I think Dame is going to be great as long as he's healthy, and I think adding in Jeremy Grant was a nice addition. I do like the addition of Gary Payton II, who was on the Warriors last year, a big piece for them. I think that the Portland Trailblazers are a team that's a middle bottom, not a bottom feeder team, but enough to make it to the playoffs and most likely a playing spot at the bare minimum. Dame time should be enough for this team, but we'll see. There's a chance that everything could fall off and this team may not meet their expectations, so we'll see going forward. For OKC, this is a hot take. Will Shai Gilgeous-Alexander be moved? Now look, Shai has not had any reports of him asking out of OKC, but I do think that when you look at SGA's worth in the league, he's a young guard, he's on a max deal already, he's a player that can go get a bucket, one of the best drivers in the league, and with Chet Holmgren being injured this year, it does set back OKC a little bit in their rebuild, and there's a chance that, let's just say OKC wants to move from SGA and get back more pieces for him. It's a hot take, I understand it, but I would not be surprised if teams were interested in SGA during the trade deadline if he does become available. Let's take a look at the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think their biggest question mark is going to be the others on the team. Giannis is going to be great, probably have another MVP caliber season, but it's going to be the other guys. I think Chris Middleton being healthy, Drew Holiday performing as well, and the others, the three-point shooters, the defenders, the 3-and-D guys. It's going to be big. The others on the team have to step up if they expect to win a championship this year. Next, I have the Chicago Bulls, and I think this is a big issue, the Lonzo Ball injury. Lonzo still isn't healthy, he's dealing with his injury, and there's no timetable of him returning to this upcoming season. And on top of that, the Vucevic trade looks really bad. As of right now, for trading for Vucevic from the Orlando Magic, the Bulls gave up Wendell Carter Jr., who looks like a really good young core player, Franz Wagner, who made all-rookie first team, and have an upcoming first-round pick they're going to give up as well. Chicago might have made a bad move there, and I don't know if there's going to be any timetable of them being a team that's deep in the Eastern Conference to compete. And with a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference becoming better, there's a high chance that this could hurt the Bulls' chances of being a top team in the Eastern Conference and possibly being in the play-in if all goes wrong. For Cleveland, there's a lot of question marks just due to the fact of them trading Donovan Mitchell, now having one of the youngest, best young cores in the NBA. I think it might be too soon to tell what we can expect from them going forward right now. They're going to be a team to look out for. Go check out my previous video about 2 weeks ago where I talked about this trade, but I think the Cleveland Cavaliers definitely are going to be an exciting team to watch, and a team we have to look out to see what their strengths are and what they're going to have to fix if they want to become a championship level team in the Eastern Conference. Next up, I have the Pacers, and I think it's clearly figuring out the young core in the making. Is Tyrese Halliburton the guy of the future? I know they just drafted Ben Mathurin. Chris Duarte was a good player last year, and I also think a big question mark on what they're going to do is if they're going to trade Buddy Hield or Miles Turner. I don't think either of those two players fit their timetable for the rebuild, and they're two highly touted guys that a lot of teams that are contending teams would like to trade for. If they're able to trade those guys and add more pieces and assets to their rebuild that they're going to have to go through, they could have a really solid young core with a lot of assets going forward that could put them in a good driver's seat to rebuild this team to become a contender in the Eastern Conference for years to come. Let's look at Detroit, the Detroit Pistons. I think the question mark for Detroit is if they can exceed expectations this year. I know they were one of the bottom feeder teams last year, but I think they had a great draft with the pieces that they added in Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and having a lot of few older guys who have been around the league like Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks. I think Detroit has a lot of pieces that can compete against a lot of teams in the NBA, and if Cade Cunningham emerges as one of the franchise-altering point guards that we expect him to be, Detroit could be very scary this year and maybe even next year. Let's head over to South Beach, Miami, and I think right now is their ceiling hit. Like I said before, in the Eastern Conference, a lot of teams have gotten a lot better, and Miami hasn't themselves. They're still a good team, but I do think that there's a lot of teams out there in the East that have gotten better than them. And I think that it's going to be a little bit tougher this year to get that first seed like they did last year. Next up, I have the Atlanta Hawks, and for them, it's clearly the addition of DeJounte Murray. Look, they paid a hefty price to get DeJounte Murray, but look, he's a very good player defensively and a solid playmaker for this team. Trae Young is also going to have some eyes on him because he's going to have to be a little bit better on off ball and be much more adequate off ball, moving around and being effective. And at the end of the day, we haven't seen him be that great off the ball in his career, but it's clearly going to be about that backcourt in ATL if they can actually get it together and produce and make it deep in the Eastern Conference. Next up, I have Charlotte, and I think it might be time to retool. Look, I made a video again about this team, and I think that Charlotte at this moment might need to look at it. Right now, there's no Miles Bridges due to an impending legal case. You have Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, who are not bad players, but for what you're paying them, it's just not worth it. And LaMelo Ball is the only bright spot on this team at the moment. I think it's time to start looking at maybe moving some guys and looking to a rebuild, focus on building around LaMelo Ball, the superstar guard for the future. It's going to be Washington and Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal got the bag. Now, getting the bag means that now this team should be able to at least get into the play-in tournament. I think this team did fairly well without Bradley Beal last year with Porzingis, Kuzma, and a lot of pieces, but it's clear as day. The question mark is if this team is good enough to make it into the play-in. Looking at Orlando, they got the #1 pick in this NBA draft, and Paolo Banchero is the franchise player for this team, and I think that's going to be, will you give him the keys immediately? I think with a player like Paolo Banchero, he needs a ball in his hands. And I think I look at the guard play on the team right now, Jalen Suggs, who didn't have a great rookie season last year. You still have Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz. It's going to be interesting how they work that in Orlando. And I think that Paolo Banchero is going to be a very, very solid player in the NBA, hopefully an all-star. But it's just figuring out how they're going to use Paolo Banchero and if they're going to give him the keys immediately, because I think he has the talent to do so and take this team farther than many people expect. Let's head back to the West, and we have Memphis, the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the biggest question mark is how long they can last without Jaren Jackson Jr. He's going to be out till December due to an injury, and I think it's going to be a lot of stress on John Morant and Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks, the entire team just performing as well as they did last year. Last year, they could say it was a lucky fluke run, but I think there's going to be a lot of question marks to seeing if they can reproduce the magical run that they had last year, especially without their defensive anchor. Looking at Dallas coming up, I think losing Brunson is going to be something to look at. I think that Brunson was a solid secondary playmaker for this team, and adding Christian Wood, who has all-star capabilities, is going to be interesting. I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if Luka and the pieces on the team right now is enough to call them a championship contending team, because Luka's a championship contending player, but the players on the Mavs, is it enough to actually put them over the edge? We'll have to see, and I think losing Brunson as a secondary playmaker might be something to look at. Next, I have the New Orleans Pelicans, and this one's easy. Can the hype lead to success? When we look at all these hot takes, a lot of people think the Pelicans, back with Zion and how they performed last year, they're one of the few teams that could actually shock the entire NBA. But with all this hype, can it lead to true success? Because at the end of the day, you're adding in Zion, you're adding back the entire team together, and yes, they performed well last year. It's a whole new season. I think what's really interesting is going to see if this team is legit and actually one of the true, better, young, talented teams. It'll be interesting to see if the Pelicans can actually match the hype that they have going into the season and perform well going forward. And if they do, then shoot, the Pelicans might be on the radar for a lot of teams going forward. Next, I have the San Antonio Spurs, but I think right now, similar to the Pacers, finding the players of the future. I think Keldon Johnson is a solid, really, really good young player. And I think right now is just finding the younger players that are going to be on the team in this rebuild that you're going to focus around going forward. And I think at the moment right now, you may not have that picture in your mind, but as the season goes along, we'll see who are the players that are clearly the cornerstones of the rebuild for the Spurs in the next coming seasons. And lastly, my favorite team in the NBA, the Houston Rockets. I think the biggest question mark for the Houston Rockets going forward into this next upcoming season is the emergence of Jalen Green. Rookies in their second season, if they can pop off again, that's a great sight. And I think if Jalen Green is able to up his scoring to maybe close to 23 points per game, 24 points per game, we might be able to see a young star in the rise in Houston. And if he's able to do that, then shoot, Houston might have something over there. That concludes my biggest questions and storylines for the NBA for this upcoming season. What did you guys think? Do you guys have other bigger storylines or bigger question marks for other teams? If you do, let me know in the comment section. I'll be sure to check them out and see what you guys are thinking. If you enjoyed the video, for sure, leave a like and subscribe if you're new. And be sure to turn that post notification bell on so you never miss a video. Look, the season's about to start. You don't want to miss what I got coming for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. But until next time, stay on beat.